So this is the regular work session meeting for September 8th for the city of Minnetrista. I'm going to do roll call first. I'll start with Pam Mortensen.
I am here.
Mike Molitor.
Here.
And Shannon Bruce.
I'm here.
John Chumperland.
Here.
City Engineer Allison Fauski.
I'm here.
And City Clerk Chris Lindquist.
I am here.
And Public Works Superintendent Gary Peters.
I am here.
Finance Director Brian Grimm.
I'm here.
And City Administrator Mike Baroni.
I am here, Mayor.
And I am Mayor Lisa Whalen. I am also here. So with that, we'll move on to our agenda. We only have one item, and that's our roads discussion. Who wants to, is this Allison or Mike or Gary? Which one of you will start this off?
I'm going to nominate Allison. Yep.
All right. Thank you, Allison.
I can start off.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So at the last council meeting, we had a discussion about the upcoming street improvement projects and taking a look at how much of the Halstead reconstruction project state aid funding the council would be comfortable withdrawing from the account. So included in the work session packet this evening is an updated information on some of the street improvements. We've updated the overlay list, and then also included some additional project areas for future street improvement projects, just to start some of those conversations. So I provided a summary on page, it will be page 4 of the packet, is a summary of some of the potential project areas. And then on page 5 is a summary of some of the overlay candidates that we've identified between Gary and myself. One item to note on the overlay list, we did remove Chateau and Squire, and the reason being is with them, since they are being crack filled this year, something and I can get a more technical explanation at the next meeting if council likes this, if council would like, but basically the mix that's used, or the patching, crack filling mixture that's used, you shouldn't overlay over top of that the next year. You should let it sit. So that's why those streets have been removed from the overlay list. Otherwise, we've included some additional roads in there for council consideration for overlay. And I guess with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. But I think this evening's discussion is just to have take a look at what all streets the council would like to look at for street improvements, and then also for overlay candidates for next year when looking at budgeting.
Okay, so let me just start out by, I kind of want to circle back to what we had talked about before. So Brian had said we estimate there will be approximately $300,000 remaining in our road fund balance at the end of this year, after we've paid for all the projects that we're doing this year. So the $300,000 would carry over to next year. Right now, our preliminary budget, we have $725,000 budgeted for 2021 levying. So that would put us just over $1 million, so about $1,025,000. So with that, I know we had discussed and talked about adding Loring and Stonebridge. So should we, I guess maybe council, should we start there and kind of solidify that and then move on to others, or do you have other ideas? I'll start with Mike Molitor.
I think that, that's what we talked about last time, and I believe we kind of came to some consensus on that. So I would be in favor of doing that, and then deciding what we want to do after that.
Okay. Is the rest of the council on board with that approach?
Agreed.
This is Shannon, yes.
Okay.
I am too.
All right.
Pam.
All right. So that kind of gets that out of the way. I just wanted to make it clear. So with that, then, let's move on to the next discussion. So my other question would be of council as well as staff. Are we looking to add additional roads besides Loring and Stonebridge to the project list for 2021? I guess I'd like to see some additional projects, but we can talk about that. But are you interested in doing any more in 2021? I'll start with Mr. Chumberlain.
I would be interested in doing it. Obviously, I'm strong on improving our roads, and after being out again this weekend and looking at some of these and some that are on the overlay, there's a lot that are out there to be done. My concern is being comfortable with where the dollars are coming from. I don't know if it's going to be the excess through MSA or where we're getting them, but obviously the three, if we look at Hardscrabble, Loring, and Stonebridge, and those numbers that are listed there come in to be solid numbers, that's $1,105,000, and obviously the 300,000 plus 7.25 only gives us $1.25 million. So I guess I just need to know where the dollars are coming from.
Right, and that's, I think, why we want to have the discussion about what we want to do and how much do we want to draw from the MSA dollars, and that'll all be part of our discussion here. So, okay, so Ms. Mortensen or Ms. Bruce or Mr. Molitor, any of you want to weigh in?
Well, this is Pam. Go ahead, Mike.
I mean, in addition to the Stonebridge and Hardscrabble and stuff, we had, obviously given quite a bit of discussion to the Sunnyfield Road project, and I believe the general thought from a financial perspective was that we would follow our normal policy of assessing 50% and then taking the other 50% that the city would normally pay and pay that from MSA dollars, so that net to the city, we wouldn't be looking at additional outlays from a levy perspective. So I've always kind of viewed that as also being a 2021 initiative as well. Under those parameters, that would address John's concern about where the money comes from. Also, just to note, on the three other streets I just mentioned, Hardscrabble, Loring, and Stonebridge, the total was like 1.1, but I believe a small portion of that would come from the sewer fund and as well as the water fund. So I think that would get us pretty close to what we were levying for the road fund. So that was my understanding coming into this discussion, that Sunnyfield would be on the agenda for under those parameters.
The only thing I would pipe in here, Mike, is that we really haven't looked at the total numbers for assessment, and when we do, to assess, it may be a pretty large number for assessing one entity, and so we may have to look at that. But here's the thing: regardless of what the assessment is, and that will be remember. No, I know. I'm just saying, whatever the assessment ends up being, we still will have that outlay in 2021. And then the other thing is whether they pay it all in one lump sum or whether they pay it over 20 years. However, normally you can you do an assessment and it's repayable within a certain amount of time. So we're going to have to figure on that outlay in 2021, and we may not realize that 50, 30, 40, whatever the amount is, until several years down the road. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, but we've also talked about doing an interloan fund from another fund to cover that cash flow need and then repay that as time goes by. So this could be an opportunity to actually do that. I'm just saying we've talked about doing the Sunnyfield, and obviously that's a need as well. If we don't want to go down that path, then I still think you have the problem you just mentioned. It's just for another street.
Right. Okay. Yep. All right. Anybody else?
This is Shannon. I have some questions about the Sunnyfield project because it says in here that we haven't decided, or the school hasn't decided on the turn lanes and some of the details about that project, and so the numbers aren't all in on that. And I guess my question is, has the school budgeted for this for 2021?
I'm not sure.
Madam Mayor, I can jump in here if you'd like. This is Allison. So we've met with the school district, and the turn lane number that's included in the packet, it's on page 9 of 225,000. That is a number that the school district knows of because that was included in the traffic study that was done for Sunnyfield. So they're aware of what the overall budget, what the overall project cost is. We've talked to them a little bit about the numbers. I think the question comes back to what the mayor had indicated as far as how much do you assess one property for these improvements? And but the reason that we originally we're now looking at a 2021 project for Sunnyfield is because when we went to the school district in 2019, we were a little too late in their budgeting cycle for them to be able to budget some dollars. So they are aware that an assessment is coming. They know that the city's assessment policy is 50%. From discussions with Kevin Borg, he's indicated that he would like the council to consider something less than 50%, but it's certainly a number that we've shared with the school district.
And the question I have is the 225,000 for the left turn lane, that's in addition to the 388,000, correct?
That's correct. Yes, the 388 was the street reclamation cost only.
Okay.
I wanted to keep the reason I presented that in that manner, Madam Mayor, is so that we can take a look at what some of the maintenance costs are for that road, and then have the cost for any additional improvements separated, just for clarity as we move forward through if this project proceeds.
Okay.
I also think that because we've been talking about Sunnyfield and this project, I think we've created some expectations out there that this is going to be a 2021 project, and I think we need to deal with those expectations. That it's going to be done in 2021.
So Shannon, this is Mike. So given that, how would you feel about covering the cash flow needs by borrowing from a different fund, or do you have other suggestions for that?
I would support borrowing or using the cash flow from a different fund.
I don't think we can legally use it, but we can borrow it.
I think there may be ways
Okay.
that we can actually use it, but that's another conversation. But I'm open to that.
Okay, thank you.
So when you say different funds, this is Pam, are you talking about like the parks funds or one of those other funds? Is that what you're talking about?
There's a number of funds that, yeah.
Okay.
Those that have
Okay.
statutory regulations around them.
Okay.
This is John T. If I may, Ms. Falsky, I understand that just because it's an MSA road doesn't necessarily mean that we want to use MSA funds. And the point I'm making, I guess, is we have to submit, or do we submit to the state what our work projections are, what we're doing, and they either agree or come back with, no, here's what you have to do. What if this project is not what they would agree to? And I guess the second question then is that not only the reclaiming of the road, but if we do the upgrades with turn lanes, et cetera, would it all be considered for MSA funds?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Chamberlain, that's a great question. So state aid funds can be used for this project. The state aid has design standards so that when you go through and look at improvements such as reclamation, you have guidance as far as if it meets the state aid requirements, it's a state aid eligible cost. Now, there are certainly times when you can look at variances and so on, which is more for a design standard. But there's also state, and we went through this with the Halstead reconstruction project and with the mill and overlay project as well. There are certain costs that are not eligible. Typically, it's when you look at in an instance where you're next to a local road, for example, and you go in and you do some you typically go in 30 feet or so into a local road with a street improvement project such as this. So that wouldn't be a state aid eligible fund. So what happens is when the funding, when the streets project estimates are compiled, they're listed as state aid eligible costs and non-state aid or local costs. So we provide that funding mechanism to the council, and then state aid, in this instance, I wouldn't imagine that they would have much to say about what's being requested for reimbursement. Certainly in a state aid route, for example, a turn lane cost, as long as it meets state aid standards, I don't envision we would have difficulty in proving that it's eligible for state aid reimbursement.
Okay, a follow-up to that, I guess. I appreciate the answer. The other question would be, how quickly are those funds then? Do we do, just like a contractor would do progress, put in a request for progress payments? Do we do the same thing on the state funds, or do we have to wait till the end to get them back?
That's a great question. I'll take a run at this, and if I misspeak on anything, if Finance Director Grimm can speak up to that effect. But typically with a state aid project, you can get most of the state aid reimbursements. I'm looking back at the Halstead reconstruction project. I believe the city received a lump sum reimbursement very soon into the project. For a project like this, I would anticipate a very short turnaround in getting state aid funding, but there's always a small portion of the state aid costs that are withheld until the project's closed out from state aid. For example, there was a project that we closed out here just a couple of months ago, and it was holding, I think, like $200 on the state aid account. So they do withhold a certain amount of funds. It's not usually a significant amount.
Thank you.
So if I'm doing the math correctly, we have just under $1.4 million, and we're eligible to ask for the additional $944, which would then leave a balance of $431, $432, and it's projected that we would get nearly $214 in 2021. That would be enough to cover estimated more than cover the cost of the Sunnyfield Road project. If you needed additional funds, then you could borrow it from other sources. If that helps clarify anything.
Yeah, it does, I think.
So what you're saying is you'd rather advance the money from the MSA funds rather than borrowing it from another fund?
Yes, because right now, my understanding with the way the MSA funds work is we have to eventually close out the Halstead Road project. This $944,000 is the balance that we could potentially ask for to reimburse the city for expenses related to the Halstead project. Once we close it out, we're no longer eligible for those funds. And so
understood.
So I think we need to ask for them now. Go ahead.
So here's a question for you. Since you were part of the council or mayor at the time, and I was not when this was first proposed, why did we not ask for the 944 right from the get-go? Why do we? I mean, because until the last couple of meetings, I didn't realize that we had almost $1 million available to us. Why didn't we ask for that before?
We did. It wasn't 944 that was outstanding. We thought, and I don't recall the exact conversations, but we were thinking we should leave some in. Couple reasons. One, originally we were going to be doing the entire length of Halsted. So, and then at some point we said, okay, well, we'll just do the gravel portion right now. And it had to do with feedback from residents and so on. So we said, okay, well, let's do the gravel portion of Halsted right now, and then let's think about, and then we can do the remainder of Halsted at a later date. So maybe we should withhold or keep some funds in there for that project. That's my recollection. Again, that's kind of what we thought. Plus, you also think, well, if the project goes over, you want a little bit of extra. So we thought there would be some extra in there. But I think I recall that there was only like 400,000 left in the balance after we withdrew. But maybe there was more because the project lingered on for so many years. And so by the time we got into it and got done, we had more than the 400 left.
Yeah, I was the mayor and council, this is Mike Baroni. So I believe that last sentence the mayor said is fairly accurate, because we did have an unusual amount of time that this project took, as everybody is well aware of. And we did not have nearly 900 something thousand in there back when this project was essentially in its first year, but over the time we kept accruing money to it. So besides the first couple of reasons the mayor mentioned, I believe that we just also had some additional MSA dollars placed in our account like it's done every year. So now we're at 900 something thousand. So, but there was a combination of all those things, not doing a chunk, taking longer, and leaving some in for reserve. So.
So this is Shannon. What possible reason would there be not to request this money be reimbursed for MSA dollars? Why wouldn't we request this?
This is Councilmember Molitor. One real big reason I would have about this is when you think about how this project was funded, just like all of our projects, or just a little bit different, but we got MSA dollars, right? And then city paid for part and the residents paid for part. And I don't remember what the percentage was. It was quite a bit less than 50%. But now, if we go back and claim 977,000, well, everyone's already chipped in their piece, and all of a sudden now the city's piece has gone from 30%, 50%, pretty much down to nothing because it's MSA. And so it could create a little bit of an issue there where people are saying, well, we're paying half, and now all of a sudden, and the city's paying half, and now the city's not paying anything. So you might have a little bit of an equity issue there.
Yeah. So,
but the
Mr.
residents
Molitor, let me explain how this works. Yeah. So, for instance, the residents were not assessed 50%. They were assessed. If you look at the total project, they were assessed about 19 or 20% of the project. And what we ended up doing, I believe, is we said, okay, we have MSA dollars, so we'll take that off the top. That leaves X number of dollars that the city will have to fund, and of that, we will assess you 20% or whatever it was. And so it was significantly less than the 50%. Just FYI.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is, of that fund, what's left, if let's say, I'm just making up numbers here. Let's say it was it was a $3 million project. If we assessed 20%, and the MSA dollars, let's say it was $1 million, and the city's portion was 1.5. If we start taking all of that away and start even reimbursing ourselves for what the residents paid for, I don't want to get in that situation. I'm not sure how the numbers work out of that. I know Brian, I had a discussion with you about that, and I don't know where we left with what the actual number would be if before we got to the point where we would kind of be double dipping.
Well, and I don't think we would be double dipping. This is Brian. I mean, it's really, I mean, basically the residents, no matter how you look at it, paid 20%, whether we use MSA dollars or whether we use taxpayer at large dollars to pay. The residents out of a $3.3 million project got assessed 700,000-800,000 or something like that. So, you know, whether we reimburse ourselves now after the fact so we can do other roads, I just don't see what leg they'd really have to stand on. To me, it's sort of irrelevant.
Okay.
Well, Mike, Mike, the other question I would have, if you use that rationale, then we would have to assess $0 to the school district because we're using 100%.
No. That's not what I'm saying.
I'm just saying.
That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
No.
All right.
What I'm saying here is if the project was, let's say, $3 million, the residents paid, and these numbers won't work out. They have to do something like $2 million, and the residents paid $800,000. That's 1.2 that the city would pay if the number, let's say it was $1 million. I don't want to get over the number we already paid. So if the city's total contribution to this Halsted project was less than or was more than 900,000, then we're fine. And I think it was.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Then I'm fine.
In fact, Brian, if I recall correctly, I think the bond was somewhere around 2.5 million, or was it 3.5?
The bond was like 3.3, but we got to remember we bonded for Enchanted at the same time. Basically,
right.
the finance.
Yeah.
Enchanted was another $1 million. Yeah. So.
Right. So 2.5.
Yeah. Halsted, the project was 3.3 million. We put 1.3 of MSA right off the top. It was a $2 million project left after the MSA. And then we assessed about 700,000 or so. So it was basically 1.3 of other funds, which is basically taxpayer at large, general city, taxpayers at large paid the rest of the difference. So that's how we're funding it.
Okay. All right, that's the math I was looking for. I just want to make sure that we didn't exceed the 1.3. So as long as we're at 900,000, I'm not concerned about it.
Okay. And so to answer Shannon Bruce's comment, I agree. Why wouldn't we take the full amount? Because we can apply it to any road we want then, be it the Sunnyfield Road project or be it Loring, Hardscrabble, the Stonebridge, it doesn't matter. We can apply those funds to any project that we're doing now or in the future.
Yeah, then I would agree.
Okay. So I think then the next question would be, are we interested in discussing then any additional projects that we would like to do in 2021? And even if we may not be able at this late juncture, I don't know, to do an actual reclamation project, but we might want to consider either mill and overlay and or some of the overlays that we have on our list.
Do we have an idea how much money we would have to put towards those projects?
Well,
I guess
it's looking. Yeah.
Ryan,
go ahead.
You do the quick math. So we started to do it earlier. So we were at a little over 1 million of funds on hand. If we do Loring, Hardscrabble, Stonebridge, that was about 1 million. Then you're a little, but then if you bring in the 944,000, you're roughly at a 860,000, and then you've got Sunnyfield and in there, but that's I think already being funded through MSA. So I think you've got 500, 600, 700,000 to potentially work with, depending on how far you want to go, or if you want to leave some for bid variances or overlays or whatever. So there's definitely some room to add either overlays or a potential small project.
Here's the other thing also to consider. We wouldn't have to spend all of that in 21. And I think Mr. Molitor, Councilmember Molitor was saying last time, we need to at least identify maybe for 22 what roads we might want to do, we could use some of those funds in 22 as well. It's not like there's a timeline that we have to use it in 21. But what I'm saying is we should look for 2021 doing either some mill and overlays and or some overlays. And even if you wanted to split it half and half kind of thing, then you'd have, 400, 450, whatever that amount is, that would roll over into 2022. And then you could look at Minneapolis and Jennings Cove, those kind of areas.
Well, I think from the numbers you described and based on what we see here from Minneapolis Avenue, you could do that in 2021.
Could you? Okay.
The number of complaints we're getting here is continually goes up, and the water issues are getting worse and worse. Right now, I've got construction going on both sides of me of residents trying to keep the water out that's coming down this road. So, if we can move that, from the numbers here, it looks like we could do that. And obviously, the pavement condition scores are one of the lowest ones in all of the projects listed here. And I think also when we talked about potential number of accessible units at 38 parcels, just roughly I counted 48. I don't know where the 38 come from. And there's a bunch on Crestridge that also would get assessed at a lower rate. So I think, even if this number goes up a little bit to 356, when you split that in half,
right, you still have enough.
That you'd have plenty, and then some to do some mill and overlays other places.
Mm-hmm.
This is Shannon. I'd like to consider the mill and overlay list and looking at these streets on this list that are under the PCI rating of 60, because I think if we let them go any longer, they're not going to be candidates for mill and overlay much longer. So maybe that's a way to determine which ones get mill and overlay if they're under 60. I count 1, 2, 3, 4 of them that are under 60. Does that make sense to anyone?
What's the cost of those four together?
Well,
Brian's
the only
probably
thing
got an answer to calculate.
Hold on. One thing I'd like to point out, okay, just look at it this way. For instance, Clarence Avenue, okay, it's a the rating is 40.3. Clarence Avenue, it's a very, very small area. It's just kind of the apron, if you will, as it approaches 110. And then the other one is County Road 110 extension. If you look at the number of people that use that road, it's very nominal. So what I also think we need to do, I don't disagree, we should look at that, but what I'm thinking is like the Clarence Avenue could easily fall into our regular road maintenance. We do get $50,000 worth of road maintenance annually, and it could easily fall into that. There's a few others that are like $7,000, $12,000. Those could easily fall into that maintenance category, whereas the big ticket items, Painters Road, Painters Circle, Preserve Boulevard, those are ones we might want to at least look at sooner than later.
All right, and some of those I don't mind, but I mean, when you're looking at a PCI of 88 on some of these things, and on some of these roads that get very little traffic, and I'm looking at Minneapolis Avenue with a PCI of low 40s that gets a lot of traffic and feeder traffic from Crestridge. I'm a big proponent of also doing mill and overlay, but I got to look at the number of residents that we're assisting here, and it's like, I mean, I get it, but for a road that has a PCI of 88 that serves a half dozen people, and that's some more than that, but you got to look at that compared to a road that's half as shape and twice as much traffic, and so it's not just the PCI. But I do agree. I mean, I think there's enough here that we could do a little bit of both. It's not all or nothing.
Right. Yeah. And I'm I don't object to doing Minneapolis Avenue. I mean, if we can do it and get it done, and I mean, it looks like it would fall within that 400, 450 range. I wouldn't be opposed to that. Like you said, if you look at the PSI and you look at the number of residents it serves, I think that would be a good candidate.
I agree. And I'd like to also point out that the Game Farm Road work that's on the overlay section, that really does need to be done, because that dip in the road is just it's gonna deteriorate, and that's a relatively new road that I'd hate to see just crumple and cost us a lot more money in a few years if we don't take care of it now.
Yeah, and that would be one that could easily be used with our MSA. Again, there's that $50,000 a year that we get for road maintenance, and that I would see easily falling into that category.
Okay. Yeah, as long as it gets done.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't have any problem with Minneapolis Avenue either. I think that's in horrible shape, and I agree that should be a priority.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. This is Pam. Also, we've been focusing a lot of attention on other parts of the city. That area has been somewhat neglected, in my opinion, a little bit. So it'd be nice to put some activity over in that area right now as well.
Yeah.
Mayor,
John?
Go ahead, John.
Hold on.
I agree with that as well. I've been down Minneapolis a number of times, and of the ones that are listed, that has not only been patched up, but it's breaking up and deteriorating, probably more so than I see on other roads. So be able to control the water runoff there too, I think would be important to get it completely upgraded.
All right. Mr. Barone, did you want to weigh in or say something?
Yes, Mayor, I wanted to at least have this come up as we talk about the projects for 2021. If you look at page 4 under the 2021A area, we have Sunnyfield, and then there's 3 additional streets there. And when we met, staff met, and the engineers met on the phone last week, we talked about that. And I would like the engineer to Allison to talk a little bit about those other 3 streets, how they showed up on this list, why they're on the list, and maybe what the differences are between those 3 and Sunnyfield. I don't want to have the council have any landmines in the future. So Allison?
Sure, thanks, Mike. So when we first started looking at Sunnyfield, I think it was the second iteration of this plan, we looked at including Langwood as a mill and overlay based on its condition. It was a PCI in 2017 of 79. So it was approaching that that time frame for a mill and overlay. Well, since then, Morning View Terrace continues to deteriorate over there on the east side of 110. And then also, Gary and I were out a couple weeks ago taking a look at these roads in preparation for this meeting. And Marina Drive has also deteriorated, as indicated in the, let's see, I'm on page 8 of the packet. The 2017 PCI of Marina is a 62. So those are shown in the packet as some other areas that council may want to consider for additional funding, and whether or not it's included in Sunnyfield project, if we pull it out and put it in a separate project, either in 2021 or in the future. Staff just wanted to pull those in together and let council know that, those roads out there are starting to see some wear. Again, particularly Morning View and Marina are at a reclamation, and Langwood, we'd be looking at a mill and overlay in there, if that's something that council would like to consider at some point.
Allison, I also noted that on the Sunnyfield Road, the things that were listed, I'm trying to find the page here, page 9, somehow the concept of the parking has fallen off of here. Can you explain why we don't longer see that on here?
Certainly.
We looked at
Thank you,
having to need a variance, and we don't need that. So not sure why that's off. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yes, Councilmember Molitor. So we had looked at on-street parking in that area, and when we met with the school district after the traffic study had been completed, we had that discussion about paving the shoulder there and providing some on-street parking. The school district weighed in and stated that they did not see the benefit of paving that area. And there was another discussion point about to keep that as gravel, provided a clear delineation on where the travel lane is. And so the reason I bring that up is from a traffic standpoint and enforcement standpoint, if you have vehicles going westbound waiting to turn, to make that left turn onto the school campus, the main campus there, if there's a vehicle that tries to go to the right to go around that vehicle, if there isn't a paved surface there, it's very clear to the officer that that vehicle is not in a travel lane and that they would be able to enforce that. Whereas if it was paved, it becomes a gray area as far as whether or not that would be considered a travel lane. So that's why it's not included and listed in proposed work to be included in the feasibility study. Certainly, if the council would like to still consider including the paved parking, that would certainly be a component that could be included in feasibility.
One of the things, Mr. Molitor, Mike, that we talked about at the meeting was still allowing and having ample non-paved area along the road there for parking. So it just wouldn't be paved. And besides what Allison said, the other issue was if you have a turn lane and people are queued up to turn, they were concerned about cars going around them, as she said. And if it's paved, they would be more prone to go around. And if it's not paved, it would be like she said. So that was the thing. But we're looking at having a wide enough gravel area for parking. If that was my recollection, Allison, was it not?
That's correct, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So the parking isn't going to go away. It's just not going to be paved. And it'll be cheaper.
I think that gravel looks kind of an eyesore, but okay.
This is Pam. I do see their point with that, and as long as people can park, whether it's gravel or not, I do understand why they're concerned with it being, tarred or asphalt. So I don't have a problem with it being gravel as long as it's wide enough for parking.
For parking, yeah. Okay. All right. Any comments regarding Allison's recommendations or for the mill and overlay or reclamation?
I guess the question that I have, this is Shannon, have we gotten, not that complaints from residents should drive our decision making, I'm not saying that, but have we had complaints from people on Morning View Terrace about the condition of their road?
This is Gary. Yeah,
Bruce.
we've had. I'm sorry. Yeah, we've had. This is Gary. Yeah, I've had 3 or 4 different people have called in to voice their concern about it and just asking when it'll be redone, what we can do. They're tired of the patching, just like everywhere else. But yes, we had 3 that I know of.
And what about Marina Drive, Gary?
Marina Drive, we've had a few inquiries, no real complaints, just wondering more about Sunnyfield. A couple people that live on there had complained about Sunnyfield and just wondering, if their road, if Sunnyfield would go through, if their road would be done. And I said that's up to the council. I just had 2 inquiries on that, but no honest real complaints about it. But it is, if you drive, it is definitely in need of being redone. It is beyond its life.
Thanks.
So here's a question. The mill, so Langwood would be in mill and overlay. And so is it possible to have that? So, and I understand there's a small portion of Sunnyfield that wouldn't be reconstructed or reclamation. It would just be a mill and overlay. So would it be possible to have that bid, how do you say, as an alternate bid, so that we would know what it would come in at? And if it comes in, because that would not be an assessment. And if it comes in at the 126 or lower and the other bids come in where we think they should and we have enough money, then we could do it. And if we don't, we put that off till the following year.
Yes, Madam Mayor, that's certainly an option that we could look at doing if that's the council's direction to do so.
Any thoughts on that?
Because to your point with Marina and Morning View being reclamation projects, you can bid them as an alternate, but you've already got quite a bit of work and resident input and interaction with regards to the public hearing process up until bidding. So you could certainly put them in as a bid alternate as well, but I guess at that point it becomes a perception as, you know, are those folks now anticipating a project will be done, and if bids come in a little too high, you know, they'd have to wait another year, and perhaps they have that expectation that it would be done.
Right.
So were you suggesting doing a bid alternate for Morning View and Marina? I thought you had said a bid alternate for Langwood.
Just for Langwood, because Langwood,
okay,
is and Engineer Fauski was saying, we don't do a assessment for that, so we can, and it's not that much dollars to have that bid alternate done. So then if it comes in too high, or we don't have the money, we don't do it. If it comes in lower or where we think we can afford it, then you do it. It's whereas the other ones, you have public hearings and it's assessments and there's more time and lot different issues involved.
So the bid alternate would also include that section of Sunnyfield that's just the bill and overlay as well?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Right. So if we did, so doing Sunnyfield with a bid alternate of Langwood Drive for a mill and overlay. We're doing hard scrabble lowering and Stonebridge in Minneapolis. And now we need to, we've looked at a few of the, let me go back here, few of the overlays, not mill and overlays, just overlays, some of which we could do with our 50,000 MSA maintenance dollars, such as the Game Farm Road, that's 12,000. Highland Road, there's 7,000. You could probably even do the Clarence Avenue. So you could hit some of those smaller things with that 50,000 that we have. With that said, what do you want to do, or what should we be doing then for the other overlays, or do you want to do more reclamations?
I think the Painter's Circle at that piece, PSI is low enough that needs to get done. Painter's Circle and Ridgewood Cove at 5606. I think those two I'd recommend being done.
The only, yeah, the Ridgewood Cove is pretty bad. The only thing, Painter's Circle, you have to understand, you have to drive all the way down to the end.
Yeah, it's one of those things where Painter's Creek leads to Painter's Circle.
Right. Painter's Road leads to Painter's Creek, leads to Painter's Circle, you know.
Oh, yeah, it's all three of them.
Okay,
Right.
yeah, that's true.
So
it's almost like those three should all, well, I think we just arrived at the conclusion those three probably should all be done at the same time. Then you start getting into a kind of substantial amount of money there.
The other thing.
Well, what if we just did Ridgewood Cove for 2021.
Well, how much, I guess I would say, let's see, what are the numbers adding up to if you did Ridgewood and you did all of Painters? 171, 37, 82, and 34. What would that add up to? 71, 208, 280,
About
not
325,000,
290, 325.
325.
Okay, and you're at 356 with Minneapolis plus a little bit. So you'd be able to do all that if you took out the full 944, and you'd probably still have some left over. Again, what you could do is you could bid it out and see where the numbers come in at.
The other
When you
thing,
start-
as was mentioned before, because these are mill and overlays, we're not going through the assessment process and the public hearing.
Right.
Is depending on how the bids come in, we could decide to do these a little bit. We can make this decision a little bit later, just like we did this year when we were thinking about the roads, and things came in a little bit better than we thought, so we added fielding on. Kind of the same thought process could be done here. Or we could commit to doing like Ridgewood now, and then the other three, look at how that comes in after the bids are in.
Yeah, my concern,
But
if we just did Ridgewood, you might end up paying higher price, maybe, I don't know, because of the quantity.
Well, you do Ridgewood, you got to throw in Game Farm and Highland as well. So
yeah.
It's a little higher. But,
Yeah.
I mean, if the numbers add up, we could probably commit to that. All three of them. I mean, it's enough. I think it did.
Right. Anybody else want to weigh in?
Actually, one more comment about that. The more I think about that, the more likely it would work out, because when we're talking about the road fund right now with a balance of $305,000, that balance will if we take that down for the hardscrabble, that balance will continue to build again next year as assessments from existing projects pay off. So I don't know what that project to, when nobody knows for sure, but that might be just enough to also make up for any possible shortage, although I don't think that's the case. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Pam, John?
Lisa, can you just quick? Oh, go ahead, John.
Go ahead, Pam. No, go ahead, Pam.
Oh, I was just saying, can you recap where we're at with this conversation now?
Okay.
We're bouncing.
All right. So we're going to be doing hardscrabble, Loring, and Stonebridge. Those will be 3 reclamation projects. We're going to have Langwood Drive bid as an alternate when we did the Sunnyfield Road mill and overlay. And then we're looking at doing Minneapolis Avenue as well. So that would also be a reclamation project. So we would be doing Minneapolis, Hardscrabble, Loring, and Stonebridge, those 4 roads as reclamations for 21. And then possible mill and overlay for Langwood, and then possibly doing trying to tick off some of the overlays that are on our list, potentially some of those. So we've talked about Game Farm Road at 12,000, Clarence Avenue, Highland. Those are smaller ones that we can probably tick off with our $50,000 MSA, possibly funds, leaving it open to doing some other ones. We've talked about Ridgewood Cove and Painter's Circle, Painter's Creek, and Painter's Road. Only doing those together because they're kind of all together there. The other thing I look at is what is it going to cost if we don't do the overlays now? What is it going to cost the city in a few years if they're then all of a sudden reclamation projects? And that's one of the things, if you look at Painter Road, Painter Creek, and Painter Circle, that could easily be over $1 million in just a couple of years if it goes to a reclamation project. And I think that's one of the reasons we're trying to extend the life of these roads so that we have more time to fix other roads and then come back and then circle back to these. Is that a fair assessment?
This is John T. Clarification, Ms. Falsky, if I may, on these mill and overlays, partial mill overlays. The document that we had from February that we worked off of showed a heading on these ratings, the OCI rating, as being 2018. But the one that we're looking at right now, updated with the new roads, the heading is 2017. Do we know what specific year the rating is from? To me, I guess what I'm looking at here is if they're 17, now we're 3 years down the road on those ratings. If it's 18, we're only 2. I don't know how much difference that makes, but in my mind, it does.
Councilmember Shumperlin, thank you for asking about that. So the 2017 is the correct year for the rate when the ratings were done. The error on my part was the report was 2018, and that's where I grabbed that 2018 number from the February report. But the ratings were in fact done in 2017, and when we looked at, you know, if the earlier this year to do some updated pavement ratings, after much discussion, there was the decision to hold off because we had some projects in the hopper, so to speak, to hold off one more year to get. So instead of doing the OCI ratings every 3 years, this one would be a 4-year cycle. So we were looking at 2021. You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Right, Madam Mayor and Council Jelly, just the last comment. So this is all incumbent on, I mean, it's pretty clear consensus that we do want to bring the 944,000 in MSA dollars in, right, as it talks about on page 2 of the memo, and that would be a resolution that would come back at the next meeting.
Yeah, I'm hearing, I think so. Let me just kind of go down the road. Pam, are you okay with that?
Yes.
And Mike Molitor?
Yes.
And Mr. Trumperlin?
Yes.
And Ms. Bruce?
Yes.
Okay, so we will apply for a reimbursement of the 944. And you'll bring that back then at the September 21st council meeting, correct?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'll bring that back to the next meeting.
All right, thank you. And then moving forward then, we'll have to notify people on Minneapolis, Hardscrabble, Loring, and Stonebridge that we're going to be doing their projects next year. Maybe I should ask Mr. Baroni or Ms. Fauski, what would be the next step to move these projects forward?
Madam Mayor, I can speak to that. So as we discussed at the last meeting, there's some time sensitive work in the Hardscrabble area for wetland delineation. So we do have a proposal for professional services coming at the regular meeting for the reclamation areas. So it currently does not include Minneapolis. So there's a couple options we could look at. One is to get authorization just for the wetland work only, and then bring in, revise the proposal to include Minneapolis Avenue. Another option that the council can consider, and we can go through this at the regular meeting as well, is to approve the proposal as presented and then bring in an amendment to include the additional fee for the Minneapolis Avenue component of the project.
Okay, all right. Yeah, either way, we could do it either way. Again, we could have that discussion at the meeting, but then after that's approved, what's the next step? Notifying the residents? What would be the next step after that then?
Typically at the authorization to proceed with the feasibility report to start pulling together some preliminary numbers. Now, typically, prior to this year's project, we typically did an open house once that feasibility report was completed, and we had some preliminary numbers for residents. As the council may recall, we then had the folks that opted out of the 2019 project because they did not feel that they were that their street needed, well, they didn't feel that they should pay for the project, so that portion was removed. So for this year's project, we went in ahead of the feasibility report and had an open house with the residents. We can certainly do that in this instance. I think that was something that we had talked about a couple of months ago, was to have that open house with the residents, and then complete the feasibility study, hold the public hearing, so that we would be on track to bid the project. I think we were looking at either February or March for a bid opening, so that we can try to get as many contractors' eyes on this project as possible. And with the size of the project, I would anticipate this would be an attractive project.
The other thing, though, is we are still, it's still time sensitive for the wetland delineation. So that would have to be decided for sure tonight.
I would recommend it, yes, Madam Mayor.
Yeah.
The growing season,
Okay.
if I remember correctly, is October 15th. So we want to have enough time to be able to get them out.
Right. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Hearing none. So are we all, staff as well as council, are we all clear on what the direction and what the next steps are?
I believe we are, Mayor.
All right. Council, anything else? All right. If not, then we can be adjourned if there is a motion.
This is Pam. So moved.
All right. So Pam made that motion and Mr. Molitor seconded that. All right. And then all those in favor signify with aye. Pam?
Yes, aye.
And Mike Molitor?
Aye.
John Chamberlain?
Aye.
Shannon Bruce?
Aye.
Lisa Whalen, I vote aye. So we are adjourned, and we will reconvene for our 7 o'clock meeting at 7 o'clock. Thank you.